A black glove found near the Arizona home of Nancy Guthrie could be leading investigators to a possible breakthrough. The glove, one of 16 found in the nearby area, according to FBI officials, appears to match the ones worn by that suspect seen in that Nest doorbell camera footage, this one here. So it allegedly containing DNA evidence for an unknown male profile. That's what we're told so far. That evidence currently being tested through the combined DNA index system. It's a known database used by the feds called CODIS. Judge Andrew Napolitano is our senior judicial analyst joining us live on set. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean. So this will be of enormous value to investigators if this person is already in CODIS. And many people are. I mean, I'm sure I'm in there because of they took my fingerprints and other DNA when I became a judge. It was a while ago, but it's still in there. So there's a lot of people in there. But if this person is not in there, it will still help them if this connects to something else. But if that person's not in there, it's not going to help them.
There is, we're talking about CODIS, so they could be in this potential database, which you pointed out. So if there was any run-in with the law that this person had at any point, their DNA...
If they ever had a government job, if they ever took the oath of loyalty to the United States, if they were ever in the military...
Yeah. That's a big one, too. They would be in that database. If they're not, I've also heard rumblings that they may use another database, the databases that use the DNA testing for finding a relative, like an example would be 23andMe, something
Correct.
like that. Could that be a tool for investigators?
Yes. Look, there are hundreds of investigators working on this. The vast majority are FBI because the sheriff doesn't have the assets that the FBI has. And I'm not being critical of the sheriff, but the FBI has people who are astute and highly trained in this type of very technical investigation. And they have a problem of time because of Mrs. Guthrie's age and health condition.
Day 16.
Yeah, so, you know, we all can hope, but you don't have me here for hope. You have me here to try and explain how this works. Is the data from the database enough to justify an arrest warrant? Probably not, but it might be enough to justify a search warrant. And that might lead to more evidence which would justify an arrest warrant.
Right. That was where I was going to go. Where could this, if they get a match, they have the match, that leads them to...
Well, if they have a match, they're going to know where that person lives. They're going to immediately ask a federal judge, if it's the FBI, a state judge, if it's the sheriff, if it's in Arizona, for a search warrant and immediately search that house. Now, they had a full start the other day.
Right.
They spent a day going through a house a couple of miles from where Mrs. Guthrie lived, and they found nothing. Yeah. I would love to see, we haven't seen it yet, Sean, I would love to see the affidavit submitted to the judge to get the judge to sign the search warrant. What was the evidence? They're not going to reveal that, and I don't blame them, because they don't want these creeps that have Mrs. Guthrie to know what they know about them. So we don't know what was the basis of that search warrant. We only know that it was apparently fruitless.
You know, I know we're getting off the topic that we talk about, or I typically talk about with you, but I can't help but to notice that we don't talk about motive enough. And I know that we don't know the motive. When does that question begin to take prominence?
Well, motive helps them find the person because motive demonstrates the person's sophistication or a financial situation. Now, we don't know if those ransom letters were real. The FBI knows. The FBI knows as soon as they look at those things if they're real or if they're
because one of them said that it was very articulate. Then they said that it could be they could be using AI to write some of this stuff. I mean, and it is. I mean, some of the tech these days, it does make it a little more difficult for investigators to sift through, because is this a real person writing it, or did they have assistance from AI? I mean, is that a hurdle?
Or is this someone trying to trick the FBI, which of course is another criminal event, a false report claiming to be the the kidnapper of her. That's obstruction of justice. That sends the FBI off onto a wild goose chase, so to speak. It sends them off in a direction that's not going to lead to the result.
Yeah, and it's the conversation that you and I are having right here. It is, in terms of the conversation itself, it's fascinating because it matches the conversations that are really happening all across America. I mean, everybody has been weighing at Savannah Guthrie's a high-profile person.
Right.
Everyone has thoughts. They have hopes and prayers that they want to see Nancy Guthrie returned home. They feel a part of this case. It's been ongoing. And we just don't have that many answers at all.
It
leads to
is
speculation.
a head-scratcher that we don't know this. I'm going to give the FBI credit since I know the way they work. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that they know that they haven't revealed, even though it is deeply they may have shared it with Samantha and her siblings, I don't know. It's deeply frustrating for us that we don't know what this is. But they are fearful of revealing something that would aid the kidnappers. So that's why we haven't seen that search warrant that resulted in the investigation of that house near Mrs. Guthrie's.
Yeah, that's where my mind goes to, that they know a little more than they're letting the public know, and that could impede their investigation. So from a strategic standpoint, they're standing down from releasing said information. If
They have judges that sit 24/7 in the state system and in the federal system. So if they have something, they can get a search warrant very, very quickly.
Right.
Getting an arrest warrant is another step. Search warrant first, arrest warrant second.
Let me switch gears with you and go to Epstein, if I can. I was talking to the South Carolina Congresswoman about this, and this made some news over the weekend. AG Pam Bondi claiming the DOJ claiming to have released all the files. Now, they're all out there, but there's still some pushback on that. Is that pushback warranted?
You know, some of the pushback is from people who are frustrated that the true victims here are the young women, now middle-aged ladies, who were abused as children, and they seem to be forgotten in all of this, as it has taken a political dimension. Aha, Bill Gates was there. There's a picture of Bill Clinton in a hot tub. I mean, that stuff is there, but that's not the principal story here. The principal story here is, did local and federal authorities drop the ball by not aggressively prosecuting him and by allowing this to go on for so long? Mm-hmm. That's the real story. Add to that now Dr. Michael Baden, in my view, one of the world's great pathologists, saying, I looked at the records that they released. This is not what it should be. There should be another autopsy. So I don't know. I know that Pam Bondi wants this off her desk and wants it over. Yeah. I think it's got a life of its own.
What about those that are asking for indictments? You and I have had off-camera discussions about the possibility of an indictment or lack thereof for those that may have been involved in this sex ring involving minors with Jeffrey Epstein. But there is something called the statute of limitations.
Right. It's 5 years. So, and he's been dead for more than 5 years. And the government has had these files. The last thing in the files is the autopsy report. Mm-hmm. So I don't know who could possibly be indicted unless someone tried to tamper with evidence to mask their involvement after his death. That would start a new statute of limitations running from the time of the tampering. But if people are going to be indicted for what happened on that island, it's too little and too late.
That's not going to happen. There can't be indictments.
I can't think of a way that any of them could be indicted unless, as I said, they tampered with evidence to disguise themselves.
So then it comes to this point where you've got multiple sheets of paper with names listed in alphabetical order, and I mentioned this earlier. These are politicians, celebrities, donors, right? Powerful people on this list, but it becomes nothing. I don't want to say anything more than that, but more fodder.
You know, he apparently was a sophisticated financial guy who had many, many financial relations with many, many people. Yeah. The question is, should you have been doing business with somebody that also had this part of their lives, raping young women? Or should you have known that he was doing it? Or are you totally innocent? I mean, can you prosecute? Can you go after his dentist for fixing his teeth?
Yeah.
Can you go after his doctor for maintaining his health? How far is this going to go? What did people know about this man? We call him a creep. His behavior was about as foul and reprehensible as you can imagine. But did everybody that dealt with him on a professional level know it?
Great point. And I also wonder about the executives that you see stepping down because their names were found in these files.
Some of them, I think, are stepping down because they lied about it. I don't know what's going to happen to Howard Lutnick. First, he said I had nothing to do with the guy. Now it turns out he had lunch with his family at Epstein's home. Is the lie enough? I have nothing against the Secretary Lutnick, but I'm just using him as an example. Is the lie or the misleading of the public enough to trigger a resignation? Or are your hands tarnished just because you had anything to do with this guy?
Does he have to come out and put out another statement? Does he have to address it again?
I think he does. You talk about Secretary Lutnick?
Lutnick, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
He may have done so already, and I may be unaware of it. Again, I'm not picking on him, just using him as an example. My friend from Fox, Charlie Gasparino's name is in there. Why? He tried to interview some of these people, and somehow his name
and
got
that's
in
an
there.
important point. It's
So
a very
there's a lot of
point. There are
people
people that are in there that are not. There's no criminal wrongdoing at all.
Correct.
But their names were mentioned at some point for whatever reason.